On the morning of February 23, 1995, Nick Leeson left his trading desk at Barings Futures, Singapore, walked to his chair, and taped a note to it. 2 words, "I'm sorry." Then he and his wife got in a car and drove to the airport. By the time senior management in London understood what those 2 words meant, it was already over. Barings Bank, 233 years old, financier to British royalty, survivor of the Napoleonic Wars and 2 world wars, had less than 72 hours left to exist. One man, one secret account, £827 million in hidden losses, and an institution that never thought to check. Barings Bank was founded in 1762 in London. By the 19th century, it was one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. The bank that helped finance the Louisiana Purchase, that served the British Crown, that was described by the Duc de Richelieu as one of the 6 great powers of Europe, alongside Britain, France, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. By 1995, it was a smaller, more specialized merchant bank, prestigious, storied, and well-respected. Its capital base was around £350 million. Nick Leeson was not who you'd expect to bring it down. He was born in 1967 in Watford, England, to working-class parents. His father a plasterer, his mother a nurse. He left school with modest qualifications and started as a bank clerk, settling checks and crediting accounts. He moved to Morgan Stanley's back office. Then, in 1989, he joined Barings. He was good at the operational side of banking, clearing, settlement, reconciliation. Not glamorous work, but essential. When Barings decided to expand into futures trading in Southeast Asia, they sent Leeson to Singapore. In April 1992, at 25 years old, he became general manager of Barings Futures Singapore and took a seat on the Singapore International Monetary Exchange, known as SIMEX. His official mandate was narrow and, in theory, almost risk-free. He was authorized to conduct arbitrage between the Singapore and Osaka exchanges, buying Nikkei 225 futures contracts on one exchange and simultaneously selling equivalent contracts on the other, capturing the price difference. No net exposure, no directional bets. In theory, no real risk. The problem was that Leeson wasn't doing what he was authorized to do, and the reason no one caught him is documented in precise detail in the report that followed. When Barings set up its Singapore operation, it gave Leeson an unusual level of control. He ran the front office, the trading desk. He also ran the back office, the team responsible for recording, reconciling, and verifying every trade. In standard financial operations, those 2 functions are deliberately separated. The person executing trades should not be the same person confirming and recording them. That separation is one of the most basic controls in the industry. At Barings Futures Singapore, one person held both. Leeson later said the account he used, account 88888, an error account that existed to log and correct clerical mistakes, was first opened in July 1992 to hide a small loss made by a junior member of his team, a £20,000 mistake. He didn't want her to get fired. He put it in 8888, intending to fix it quietly. He never fixed it. Instead, he used it again and again. The error account became a repository for losses that Leeson generated through unauthorized speculative trades he was placing alongside, or instead of, the authorized arbitrage trades. He was taking open directional positions on the Nikkei 225 index, betting on which way the Japanese market would move. That was explicitly not what he was supposed to be doing. Because he controlled both trading and settlement, he could execute trades that appeared in the official records, but whose losses were routed into account 88888 rather than the firm's standard accounts. The account was excluded from the daily reconciliation reports sent to London. As far as London was concerned, the account either didn't exist or wasn't worth examining. In 1992 and 1993, some of the unauthorized trades made money. Leeson's reported results were strong. He was credited with generating roughly £10 million in profit in 1992 alone, representing about 10% of Barings' total annual profit. He received a bonus of £130,000 on a £50,000 salary. He was celebrated. He was left alone. The losses in 888888 were growing, but London had no reason to look there. They were sending him additional funds regularly. Margin calls required by the exchanges to cover open positions. But no one in London asked the question that should have been obvious. If Leeson was running a low-risk arbitrage operation, why did he need so much margin? The Board of Banking Supervision's report, issued in July 1995, found that by the end of December 1994, the cumulative losses hidden in account 88888 had exceeded £200 million. The same year, Barings reported a pre-tax profit of £102 million. The actual position was a loss of more than £200 million. No one knew. In early January 1995, Leeson's exposure became extreme. He was taking long positions in Nikkei futures, betting the Japanese market would rise. He was also selling volatility options on the Nikkei, positions that would profit only if the market stayed calm. Then, on January 17, 1995, a magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck the city of Kobe, Japan. The Nikkei fell sharply, then kept falling. Over the following 5 weeks, Leeson doubled down repeatedly, buying more Nikkei futures, trying to recoup the losses, a strategy that only deepened the hole. Barings kept sending funds to cover the margin calls. By the time those at the top began to grasp what was happening, it was already beyond rescue. By February 23, 1995, the losses in account 888888 had reached £827 million, more than twice Barings' total capital. The report from the Board of Banking Supervision, an independent inquiry commissioned by the Bank of England and released July 18, 1995, concluded that the collapse was made possible by failures at multiple levels simultaneously. The most fundamental was the dual role. Leeson's control of both trading and settlement meant that the normal checks could not function. No independent person was reviewing his trades against his own settlement records. He could record what he chose, and no one had the access or authority to verify it independently. Barings' internal audit function flagged this as a concern in 1993. An internal audit report noted that the concentration of responsibility in one person was a significant risk. The recommendation was that the roles should be separated. It was not acted upon. Barings sent funds to Singapore, over £742 million in the months before the collapse, without adequate documentation of what those funds were for. When exchange officials began asking questions about the scale of Barings' open positions in early 1995, those questions were relayed to Leeson, who provided explanations. They were accepted. There was also a structural problem at the top. Responsibility for Leeson's operation was split between two different divisions of Barings in London. Each assumed the other had oversight of Singapore. In practice, neither had clear direct accountability. The inquiry found that senior management did not have an adequate understanding of the business being conducted in Singapore, and that no one had been clearly designated to manage or monitor the overall risk of that operation. By mid-February 1995, Barings' senior leadership was beginning to receive signals that something was seriously wrong. The margin calls were too large. The explanations didn't fully add up. They sent a senior executive to Singapore to investigate. On February 23, before that investigation could reach a conclusion, Leeson and his wife Lisa boarded a flight to Kuala Lumpur. The note on his desk said 2 words. He later traveled to Brunei, then to Frankfurt, Germany. He called Barings from Europe and offered to give himself up. By then, Barings had already contacted regulators. On March 2, 1995, Leeson was arrested at Frankfurt Airport. In London, administrators were appointed to the Barings Group on February 26. The Bank of England organized rescue discussions and approached potential buyers. Each one reviewed the books and declined. The losses were too large, the liabilities too uncertain. ING, the Dutch financial services group, agreed to acquire Barings, its assets, its liabilities, its name, for a purchase price of £1. Leeson was extradited to Singapore in November 1995. He pleaded guilty to 2 charges: deceiving the auditors of Barings Futures Singapore and cheating the Singapore Exchange. He was sentenced to 6.5 years in Changi prison. In 1998, he was diagnosed with colon cancer while incarcerated. He was released in July 1999, having served roughly 4 years of his sentence. The Board of Banking Supervision's report identified a series of systemic failures that went beyond Leeson himself: inadequate segregation of duties, insufficient management oversight, failure to act on known concerns, and a structure that allowed one person to operate without any effective independent check for more than 2 years. Reforms followed across the industry. Regulatory requirements for segregation of duties in derivatives operations were tightened. The Barings case became a foundational reference in risk management training and remains a standard case study in financial regulation curricula worldwide. Barings, as an independent institution, ceased to exist. ING eventually folded it into its own operations. The name disappeared. Leeson, after his release, wrote a memoir, gave lectures on risk management, and for several years served as CEO of the Irish football club Galway United. He is still alive. The 1,100 employees of Barings who lost their jobs in February 1995 received no such second act.